Dr. Steve Mountjoy, and I am the Dean of the School of Business here at NNU. And I'd like to cordially welcome all of you to this afternoon's events. This afternoon we'll be continuing what has been a long-time initiative of the School of Business to offer what we call a business enrichment series to bring to both the campus population as well as our friends off campus, professionals, topics that are important to the day. And today we're going to have a number of speakers. The way the format will go, we'll have a number of speakers that will come individually. They'll go roughly half an hour. I think if you have one of these, this is kind of your program for the day. If you didn't get one of these, try and get with Rhonda in the back and she can get you one. And it gives you the schedule we're going to do. We're going to have everybody talk about 30 minutes. And we'll be addressing generally the topic of business ethics and public policy and how those three interrelate, how public policy can enhance business operations, what business needs to do to interact with in an ethical way with public policy to promote the common good. So a number of different people who will be speaking on that same topic. Let me just give you a couple of housekeeping issues. For those of you who are not familiar with the Grant Center, down this corridor, first of all, you get to the women's restroom, and at the far end, you get to the men's restroom if you need that. We'll have some refreshments. Please feel free to help yourself throughout the afternoon. We are going to try to take notes and ask questions of our speakers. And the way we're going to do it, inside your black binder, you'll find these small cards, 3x5 cards. I would invite you to write down your questions as they come up. When somebody is speaking on a topic and you think you've got a good question, write it down. You don't have to leave your name if you don't want to. You can if you wish. And please get them back to the back area there, and we'll collect those. And I'll be trying to go through those and make sure that we answer those as we have a panel discussion at the end of the day. So we really invite your participation in that. In your Rhonda Gray, who is, as you know, if you don't know her, she's in school, but she's wonderful. She put together these in your folder so you can take notes if you're not doing it on some kind of electronic device. I would ask you to take all your cell phones and those kind of devices and just don't let them go off crazy sometime when somebody's speaking, so you might silence them and you don't want to press it or something like that. Before we get started, I would really like to thank our sponsors. We have three sponsors of today. The primary sponsor that we have is Rathbone, Warwick, and Gailey Investment Consulting. They're out of Boise, and a number of the people at the firm are also graduates of NNU School of Business, so we're very proud of them. And they are the primary undertaker of this event. We also want to thank KTDB, who has done a lot of wonderful marketing and promotion for us, and also Home Federal Bank, Steve Emerson at Home Federal. We want to thank all of the sponsors for putting this on. We wouldn't be here without you. So thank you very much. We don't want to hear me very much, so let me just introduce you to one of my colleagues, Dr. Pete Crabb, who is a professor here of economics and finance at the NNU School of Business. I'm not going to give you the full vita of Dr. Crabb, you can get that online, but I am going to tell you that he's going to be talking about public choice theory, economic principles, and the distinction between right and wrong. So, Pete, come talk to us. Thank you. Please help welcome with me Dr. Crabb.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. Hopefully you can hear me well on this beautiful afternoon in Eugene, Oregon. It's great to be back in Eugene, where I did my PhD with. It was a good time growing up there, except for the weather. So it's nice to see it here this afternoon. The topic of our conference, our title theme is Morality in the Marketplace of Public Policy Discussion. And so the definition of morality is the principles concerning the distinction between right and wrong. And I bring to this discussion this afternoon an economic perspective as an economist myself. And more specifically, I'm going to bring to you the economic models that are captured under the area called public choice theory. This is also sometimes referred to as political economy. And we economists define it as the application of economic tools, the economic way of thinking, to the understanding and functioning of government policy. Nobel Prize-winning economist James Buchanan said that public choice was politics without romance. In other words, boring economics. But hopefully the way it's presented this afternoon, you won't feel the same. But his goal, and other economists like him, when they brought the tools of economic thinking to the question of public policy, they wanted to displace the wishful thinking that many of us still have, that all participants in political institutions aspire to promote the common good. They're only in it for the good of us all. We want to dispel that myth and bring to this way of thinking economic ideas and the idea of rational behavior. As economists, we don't immediately think that everybody is just greedy and only working in their self-interest. They can have altruistic motives. And we don't even have to make that assumption that people are greedy in order for these models to work. What it comes down to is that everyone has preferences. We all have our different preferences for the type of weather we like to live in, or what we like to eat. And when we think about those preferences and put them into economic models, it leads to some very interesting implications for public policy. Interesting implications for how institutions, particularly government institutions, are run. So we want to bring these theories to those questions. And my thesis today is that economic theory will show you that all of the public policy questions that we address, that we think about, are all really moral questions. There's a morality behind everything that we see in the public sphere, all of the particular questions that we're addressing. And so let me show you that by going through 3 economic models from the public choice theory field or discipline within economics. I'm going to couch all of these 3 theories into 2 public policy questions that are pertinent today. The first one is the debt limit showdown that's coming in Washington. The question of whether or not the United States should raise the constitutional limit on borrowing. This headline from the Huffington Post said that it could be catastrophic for the economy. So reporters at the Huffington Post and other publications often go to economists to get the answers. Again, my thesis is that this is really a moral question. Locally, a big question is the extension of Medicaid to more Idaho residents. This is a topic that will be under debate in the legislature in Boise this coming next session. We've already heard that certain legislation is going to come to place. I've been contacted, other economists have been contacted, and they say, what are the economic consequences of that? What is it going to cost us? Again, my thesis today, though, is that's not the question we should be asking. It's a moral question on whether or not we should expand Medicaid and so forth. So, with these 2 questions in mind, these 2 public policy questions in mind, let's go to 3 models. The first one was actually developed by a political theorist, a French political theorist, the Marquis de Condorcet, if I correct my French if I need it. Condorcet, and it's been labeled the Condorcet voting paradox, the voting paradox. Most advanced societies, including in the 19th century, rely on democratic principles and majority vote. What Condorcet showed was that majority vote won't necessarily lead to what society wants. Most policy issues have a number of possible outcomes, not just 2, but our political debates often frame them as just 2 choices. So here's the model. We have 3 possible outcomes, A, B, and C, and 3 voter types, 1, 2, and 3. And the legislature wants to aggregate the preferences of all these groups into the choice that society is going to make. For example, are we going to expand Medicaid or not? So suppose that A is the choice to expand Medicaid, B is the choice to reduce Medicaid spending, and C is to leave it the same. So again, we have a public policy, and we actually have three choices that are often framed as only two. If we look at the preferences that are listed in this table, you've got 35% of the electorate that prefers A to B and B to C, 45% that prefers B to C, defunding or staying the same, and then C, the last choice would be A. And then 20% of the populace, the electorate, prefers no change to Medicaid, then possibly raising it, and lastly, declining. If we pursue pairwise voting with this, that is, there are only two choices. A would beat B, we would expand Medicaid. B would beat C, defunding it would be better than staying the same. But C would also defeat A. Keeping the level the same would be better than raising it. This violates what's known as transitivity. This is a proposition from logic and mathematics that relates a relation between three elements such that if it holds between the first and the second, it should also hold between the second and the third. Generally, for individuals, and I expect most of you to be like this, generally we expect that if A is preferred to B, B is preferred to C, and then A would also be preferred to C. This is a common trait of individual preferences. What this paradox shows is the failure of majority rule to produce transitive preferences for society, that is, for the common good. In other words, in economic speak, society is irrational. We don't follow transitivity in our preferences. So the implication of this economic model is really a moral question. It implies, first, that the order in which things are presented say a lot about how we present the choices to voters or to legislators really matters. The order of the way things are presented can determine the outcome. It also, this implication, is that there's no such thing as a political mandate. President Obama, in his speech this morning before the UN, referenced the new president of Iran saying that he had a mandate. And there is no such thing under this model. This model shows us there's no such thing as a political mandate. So the moral question, again, with Medicaid here, given the paradox that I presented, is that who is best to offer health care to the public? What institution is least likely to have this failure of transitivity? Or put another way, which institution is most likely to have transitive preferences, just like individuals do? I won't answer that question for you, but it's really the question that we should think about in that debate. Who has, as a group, what institution has preferences that follow individual choice quite a bit? Kenneth Arrow, another Nobel Prize-winning economist, built on this in a famous book, in 1951. He published Social Choice and Individual Values. He examined whether a perfect system actually existed, if we could overcome the paradox. He assumed that society would want unanimity, consensus, that they would, preferences would follow transitivity, that there would be independence of irrelevant alternatives. That is, if we had two choices, a third didn't affect the choices. And that society doesn't really want dictators. Now, many institutions want dictators. They want people to tell them what to do. But in general, society won't want that. And in his book, Arrow proved that no such voting system existed. There's no way to really overcome this paradox. So the moral implication furthering on Arrow's work was that good societies depend on good people, not good economic or political systems. So again, it becomes a moral question. We can't design a perfect system to give us the Medicaid that we want. We need good people to do that. So the Cournot paradox, the first model. Move on to the second. The second economic model to these questions, or in this public choice theory literature, is called the median voter theorem. And we heard about this most recently in the last presidential debate between President Obama and Mitt Romney. After they won their party's nominations, their policies tended to move towards the center. So suppose we have a society that is deciding on how much money to spend, i.e. a debt limit. Each voter has the most preferred budget. My example here is in billions, and because it's a little old, it should really be in trillions today to get with the program. And so we have these preferences. Everyone in society has these preferences. So the number of people out of 100 that prefer that the government spend nothing is 25%. 5 trillion, 15, 10 trillion, 20, 15 trillion, 35, and 5% expect or would like a big budget. So to find the median voter, we count 50 voters from each side, and we hit 10 billion. So the median voter theorem says that if voters are choosing a point along a line, along some kind of spectrum, and each voter wants the point closest to his preferred point, then majority of electing systems will pick the most preferred point of the median voter. The median voter exactly in the middle of the distribution. In my example, that's a $10 trillion or $10 billion budget. But the average voter actually wants less in this example, 9 billion. And most voters, or the mode, as we would say in statistics, is actually higher, at 15 billion. So what does society really want? The median voting theorem says that we don't know. We don't know society's preference. An implication of this theorem is that if two political candidates are each trying to maximize their chance of winning, they will both move towards the median. And we see this again all the time. Right after the candidates win their nominations, they change their policies. But another implication, and more to our topic today, is that minority views are not given much weight, even if their choice is actually the right or best or moral choice for society. So the implication here is again that social decisions are best made at the lowest level of decision making. That's where the minority can best be heard. Only at the local level does the minority have a chance of their preferences and their issues being heard. So the median voting theorem, another one that says that in our society today, we are not necessarily going to get a moral or just result in our public policy decisions. These economic models are showing us that these questions, these big public policy decisions, aren't really economic, they're not political in nature, they're not sociological or demographic, any other social science that you want to pick. These are moral questions. Let's go to the third model, which is much more recent, really has expanded itself. There's a lot more, many more economists that are studying in this area as of late. And this is game theory. If any of you have seen the movie A Beautiful Mind, it's about another Nobel Prize-winning economist, John Nash, who struggled with some psychological disorders, but actually did have a brilliant mind and developed really game theory and its applications to economic choices. What Mr. Nash was looking at was trying to, why don't we cooperate more often? Why do we fight in the political arena? Why do we have these battles over public choices and theories? So we can couch, using Nash's and others, we can couch the decision over the debt limit as what's known as the prisoner's dilemma, which, again, you can look that up later. There's a lot written about the prisoner's dilemma. And so what I've done here is put the question of the debt limit, that current debate over whether or not we should raise our debt borrowing season, into a political game with two parties. In the columns, we have trying to get my pointer. I'll come over here. I think I can be loud enough. Can you hear me? Yeah. Good. All right, so we have two players in this game. It's a model. The Democrats, one player, and their potential gains or wins from the game are listed second in this payoff table. On the row side, we have the Republicans, and their gains or wins from this potential game are listed first in this payoff table. And each party or player in the game has two choices. They can cooperate, or again, confess in the prisoner's dilemma, or they can deny or fight in their choice. So the Democrats can agree to cooperate and go along with or negotiate with the other party. The Republicans can choose the same. The other choice is to fight or stand on their principles or stand their ground and take their position. And these payoffs are, what are the political gains to each choice? If both decide to cooperate and we reach an agreement on the debt ceiling and we get a new budget and we move on with public policy, both have a positive gain. The polls about Congress go up. But it's relatively small. If one chooses to cooperate, say the Republicans choose to cooperate, but the Democrats fight, then the Republicans actually look good. And so they actually end up having a positive gain, whereas the Democrats will lose. They caved in. They didn't stand on their principles. And conversely, the same scenario, but with opposite outcomes, goes if the Republicans decide to fight and the Democrats are talking about willing to cooperate. So, what we don't know in this game is what is the political payoff to both fighting. We don't know that outcome. And a lot of the concern over this issue, public economically, is that uncertainty. If both stand on their principles, what's going to happen to the economy? If we end up with a government shutdown, I keep getting asked, what's that mean for the economy? My quick answer is always nothing, because this question didn't matter. So that's my recent example. So we don't really know what the payoff, the gains to each party are if they stand on their principles. So let's assume two different scenarios. In this first one, I assume that the payoff to both fighting is very similar to the cooperative. They both look kind of okay. We don't lose. We don't get we have a partial government shutdown, but everybody stood on their principles and they generally look okay. So, if this is our model, what's the behavior? Well, if Democrats look at what Republicans are going to do, what's their best choice? If the Republicans cooperate, their best choice is to fight. If the Republicans fight, their best choice is also to fight. Looking at the Republicans, if in this scenario the Democrats choose to cooperate, what's their best choice? It's to cooperate. Just comparing those. But if they choose to fight, what's their best choice? It's to fight. So we don't have a solution to the game. We don't have an outcome. And again, this is what economic theory is showing about public policy. We don't have a perfect system that is going to lead to a solution for the common good, a solution that is good for society. But there's a lot of assumptions behind my model, so let's change those and see if we can change the game. Let's make the payoff to fighting really expensive. So, again, suppose I'm the Republican Party. If they're going to cooperate, my best choice is to cooperate. And my best choice now is to cooperate, is to actually choose cooperation, because it's a dominant strategy. Conversely, Democrats, if Democrats believe that the Republicans are going to cooperate, they choose to cooperate. And if they're going to fight, they choose to actually cooperate. And so that's their best payoff. So we've got two parties that will cooperate. What did we have to do to get that? We had to make the payoff for fighting, for standing on principles, to be quite high. So now we're supposed to send somebody to Washington and say, if you stand on your principles, you're going to lose. Again, morally, that doesn't sound right, does it? So again, economic theory, basic game theory models are telling us that our system, our democratic elected system, is not going to lead to positive or what are thought of as good outcomes for society. It's morals, again, that matters. It's the morality of the people. Another implication of the game theory model is we just can't throw the bums out. If we throw the existing bums out, we get another set of bums in. Every party, Democrat or Republican, faces the same kind of strategies. And it's not because either one is more selfish than the other, or another party is more greedy or more corrupt. It's just a matter of preferences. It's a matter of what a society is doing for you. These economic models aren't saying that we're irrational as individuals, that we don't behave correctly, that we should be cooperating when we're not. We can be very good as individuals. But when we try to bring individuals together into pursuing the quote-unquote common good, or pursue some good for society, economic theory says we won't get it. As Arrow's theorem has become to be known, it's the impossibility theory. There is no perfect system for government. There is no perfect system for aggregating society's preferences. So let me conclude with two lessons from these three models. First, the individual becomes the fundamental unit of analysis, not society as a whole. Public choice theory in that discipline as a field rejects the construction of some organic decision-making unit, such as the people, or the community, or society. Economic theory says that group simply doesn't exist. Groups do not make choices, only individuals do. If you want to change society, you have to change people. Second lesson, unless the voting rule requires unanimous consent, we try that around here as faculty, sometimes it works. Unless the voting rule requires unanimous consent, which allows any individual to veto a proposal, or unless those harmed by a particular proposal could easily move somewhere else, unless those are the conditions, collective decision-making processes like majority rule force the majority to impose its preferences on the minority. If we care about minorities, we really won't be a majority rule democratic society. Public choice theory teaches us that care must be exercised, tremendous care, when establishing the domains of either private or social choice. It's not necessarily desirable to use the same voting system every time. Always the majority win. The public interest is best protected if there are exit options. If you don't like that particular law, you can move. Where does that happen? Collective choices are the most feasible, the best possibility, when they are given or done at the lowest level. So again, the two lessons. The individual matters. There is no such thing as a society, or if it is, it's very irrational. And the second lesson is that the society's choices, finding a common good, is only really going to happen at the lower level. Thank you for listening to me this afternoon. I look forward to your comments and questions with the panel later this afternoon. Thank you, Dr.
Take your card now. We're going to have a brief break while we switch. We'll bring up the next speaker, and as we do that, I'd like you to, while you are still fresh in your mind, write down your questions for Dr. Crabb regarding his presentation. And bio break, or down the hallway. You're going to get some refreshments over here. We'll be back